Should you be wearing barefoot shoes? That's exactly what we're discussing on this week's episode of the Exercise is Health podcast. We're going to cue our introduction and dive right into this conversation. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Exercise is Health podcast, brought to you by Muscle Activation Schaumburg. We're your hosts, Charlie
and Julie.
And today we're discussing this idea of whether or not you should be wearing barefoot shoes. What considerations should you have if you are trying to use barefoot shoes? Are they right for everybody across the board? How might you think about kind of progressing into them if you decide that, yeah, you do want to, but not right now? These are all different things that we're going to be discussing in this conversation today. I want to let you know that if you want to start taking action on what we're talking about today, that's exactly what we can help you with at our studio, Muscle Activation Schaumburg, where we specialize in muscle activation techniques. So all you need to do to see our availability and get on our schedule is go to our website, www.matschaumburg.com. Click the big green button that says Get Started, and you can schedule yourself for your initial MAT consultation and assessment. All right, so this topic of barefoot shoes. Look, we've talked a lot about shoe wear in the past, the importance of feet, foot muscle function, everything like that. But number one, it's been a while. So if you're like, oh, this sounds like a new conversation, yeah, because it's probably been like a year or two at least since we really did a deep dive into the feet. But this is something that, at least at our studio, a lot of people bring up to us because we do talk about the importance of their feet and their foot muscles and making sure their feet are strong. And with that, naturally comes the topic of shoe wear. And most people are aware of this idea of barefoot shoes, but for many people, it seems a little bit like edgy, like a little bit out there. It seems too unnormalized to be like, yeah, but I don't know if like I'm that extreme to wear the barefoot shoes. So we want to talk with you about that today. And then you can make a judgment call of whether or not you feel it's right for you to use this type of shoe wear.
You're right, Charlie. And so much of the language you use there is very appropriate because it's never like, should you wear them or should you not? But it's more like, what should you consider if you're thinking about, maybe your feet are not feeling very well and you're trying to, do something to get them better or stronger or functioning better, or whatever that is. Or maybe you just got onto the idea that maybe I should be wearing these shoes called barefoot shoes. And a lot of people will use different words for them, like minimalist shoes, there are like zero support shoes, zero drop, all these things. So a barefoot shoe is going to be, as what we're describing, as something with minimal support and no pitch. A shoe that basically lets your foot be in a shoe, but how it would be if it was barefoot, or at least as close to that as possible. And so that's what we are referring to as like a barefoot type shoe when we're talking today. But I think what's important to start with that many people might not know is that your feet, if you look down at your feet, you'll notice there's like a certain shape to your foot, right? You have arches in certain shapes. The toe, like if you just like outline the outside of your foot, there's a certain, shape that it might have. There's lots of arches in different spots. There's places where you might have more padding on your foot and less padding. And anyways, so that is how your foot is made. And we all have some similarities, some differences in our feet, but most of the time there's some very commonalities in our foot. And so this debate of like, are we going into a barefoot shoe? Do we need support? Or where are you in this consideration of going into a barefoot shoe possibly is starting to think about how much support does my body currently have and how much do I currently need from my shoe? That's always the balance, right? So we have different, for example, like a big topic here would be the arch in your foot. So if you put your foot down, it's like that biggest arch right in the center. And some people have really flat arches and some people have really high arches. And I'm not saying that as a good or bad thing. It's just structurally how people are made. And when muscles of your feet are doing really well, your arch feels really good, no matter how high or low it is. And when the muscles of your feet and your body are not doing very well, that's when your arch feels pretty bad. And it's not related to like the shape or the structure of your foot. It's more related to the function of your foot. So that will apply to all areas of your feet. So like some people have toe issues, some people have an heel issue, some people have an ankle issue. So when the muscles of the area and the structure above it, aka your body, when the muscles are functioning well and they're strong, these areas feel and function really well by themselves. when they are not strong and not functioning very well, or there's a lot of dysfunction or a lot of compensation, that's when these areas feel really not good. And so a lot of times when things are feeling not good, we try to look for a shoe that's very not barefoot like a supportive shoe, right? And so when we're figuring out how are we balancing this going into a barefoot shoe thing, the first thing to think about is what is the function of my body right now? If you have a fairly weak body, you're probably going to feel symptomatically a lot better in a supportive shoe. And if you have a very strong body, very highly functioning body, you're going to probably feel less symptomatic or better in like a more barefoot shoe with less of that input.
That's exactly right, Julie. So basically we're saying, okay, your feet need to be supported. The big question is whether that support for you right now can mostly come from the muscles of your feet, or whether it needs more external support in the form of shoe wear, or, well, I mean, in this time conversation is talking about shoes, but we can also talk about insoles and, you know, orthotics, things like that, right? So does the support for your feet come internally in the form of muscles, or come externally in the form of shoe wear, orthotics, and that nature? And again, just like we were saying at the beginning, it's not really like a all one or all the other. It's going to be a continuum, right? So like as your foot muscles are stronger and functioning better, you would need to rely less on external support of your shoes. If your foot muscles are weaker or not functioning as well, then you're going to need to rely more on the external support of your shoes. But at the end of the day, your feet need to be supported. Here's the other thing about it though. Your feet also have to be able to move. Okay, and they have to be able to move for a couple different reasons. Number one is throughout your feet, you have a bunch of different joints. Okay, that's how your feet move. It's not just like one, your foot is not one solid brick. Like it's made up of a bunch of different bones. When all those bones, you know, when those bones come together, those are all those different little joints. Those joints have cartilage that line them. And in order for that cartilage to stay healthy, those those bones need to move. Okay, there needs to be motion that happens at those joints in your feet in order for the cartilage of your feet to stay healthy. So that's thing number one. So if you are using shoes that are very structurally supportive, then that oftentimes prevents your foot from moving, you know, either how it was designed to or at all, depending on the severity of the structure, right? And without question, that ends up being detrimental to the health of the cartilage that lines those joints. Why that's important is because when that cartilage becomes less healthy and eventually wears away, that's what we call arthritis, all right? So over time, that can be a tremendous issue if we're talking about like making sure our feet are healthy and strong and functioning well. We need to make sure that, yeah, the muscles are functioning well. We also need to make sure that the cartilage is functioning well. And one thing cartilage needs, hyaline cartilage specifically, in order to stay healthy, is for the joints that it is in, the bones that it lines, for motion to be happening there. And that's less likely to happen with a more structurally supportive shoe. Now, the second reason why motion of the feet is so important is because if your feet do not move in the ways that they are designed to move, your body has to compensate by picking up motion elsewhere. And it's going to go up. You can only go up from the feet, right? It's only going to go up. So, you know, a lot of people connect the foot and the ankle together. So the next place up from that is going to be the knees, and then the hips, and then the SI joints and the low back, and you know, really all the way up to the neck, okay? The number of times I've seen somebody have some kind of not like small symptom, like a pretty noticeable symptom somewhere in their knees, their hips, their back, even all the way up into their shoulders and neck, that stems from their feet not being able to move well, is more times than I can count. Like it is a very, very common thing for that to be the case, where people's SI joints feel locked up, their low back feels tight. Their shoulder, they go for a run and their shoulder all of a sudden feels really achy. It's like, I'm not even using my shoulder. That was me, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Back in 2013, I would go for a run and within half a mile, my shoulder would be so tight and aching. It was because my feet were not moving well. That wasn't necessarily because of the shoe wear I was wearing, is because of injury history that I had with my feet, and my feet weren't functioning well. But point being, your feet have to be able to move, and if they cannot move properly, then that motion has to be compensated for and picked up elsewhere in the body, which is going to start to stress out those other areas, and you start to get symptoms in those areas in the form of pain and muscle tightness.
That's right, Charlie. And I think, the picture you're painting here that I don't think a lot of people realize is that when you choose a more supportive shoe, you are compensating how that foot should be moving and thus creating more compensations up the chain. And so kind of like where I started, where we're talking about your foot needs to be supported. So it's kind of like you have to figure out like, okay, where am I at right now, right? Like how much support do I own, meaning my muscles, and how much support do I need to get from somewhere else, aka my shoes or orthotics or whatever else you're putting in your shoes or wrapping your foot in and all that stuff, right? Because we know we need support. And so then a lot of times we feel like, well, that's fine. I have weak feet. They're symptomatic. When I wear this supportive shoe, I feel amazing. So why is this shoe a problem? The reason that shoe is a problem is because it's causing lack of motion or less motion or modified motion in the foot, which then creates compensation up the chain. So you know how many times we get someone to get their feet stronger and we get them out of a supportive shoe so that they can be more mobile and they are actually strong and supported in a barefoot shoe, then their knee symptom goes away, their hip symptom goes away, their back pain goes away, their shoulder. And so it shows us how much is related to how well your foot is functioning, causing stuff up the chain of, I guess we could call it the chain of your body, right? Which is AKA the other joints of your body are then struggling because they are having to compensate because now your feet are highly modified. So when we're talking about like this barefoot shoe situation, we always like to figure out, okay, well, we don't want people to be in pain. Like, let's figure out what's comfortable right now, right? Let's start there. If your starting place right now is in a highly cushioned, highly supported, highly arched up, or it can either be cushioned, right? You got a lot of squish, or very stiff, right? So anything that's modifying your foot in a lot of ways, that means that you're in a very supportive shoe and you are in the side where your shoe is very supportive rather than your muscles. So then the mission is then, since we know we have to, if you want to have the most highly functioning feet, less compensations up your chain, keeping your feet joints healthy, all that kind of great stuff, is that we have to start strengthening so that you can be getting support from your foot muscles and your body rather than your external. So that is kind of like the journey now, right? It's like we figured out where you're at. We know we need to get you to a more mobile place, a more internal strength and internal support place. And I think that will be our next point here, which is we have to start strengthening your body and specifically strengthening your feet.
That's exactly right, because the truth of the matter is your foot muscles should be able to be strong enough and function well enough to support your body weight. But just like any other group of muscles in your body, if you haven't been working them, they are going to become deconditioned. They are going to become weakened. And so if you're hearing this conversation and be like, oh, it sounds like Julie and Charlie are saying that I should just start wearing barefoot shoes. That's not what we're saying, because if you jump right into using them and now all of a sudden require your foot muscles to do all this extra work that they're not accustomed to, that would be like saying, oh, you haven't squatted for the last 20 years? Oh, great. Let's load you up with 500 pounds on your back. Let's just try some reps, just see how it goes. That'd be a horrible idea, right? And yet we're asking our foot muscles, which are these teeny tiny muscles, to support our entire body weight. All of a sudden, no, we don't want to do that, okay? So like Julie was saying, we need to build in some strengthening for them. And as your foot muscles get stronger and as they continue to function better, then you can start to progress away from shoes that are really stiff and supportive, that you're having to rely on the support and the structure of the shoe, and you can start to rely more on the strength and function of your muscles to support your feet. And so you can start to progress out of the stiff and supportive shoes more towards a barefoot shoe. And fortunately, there are a number of options in between, like the super brick like shoes, and basically the open-toed sandals that are basically paper thin, or the ones that I wear that I would that were dirt cheap and basically like the thinnest layer of rubber sole on the bottom and some laces.
Don't step on rocks.
Right, exactly. Yeah, just stepping on rocks was not fun. But I built up the strength and function of my feet to be able to use those shoes. So yeah, that's the direction we want to go, is to be able to build up the strength and function of your feet in order to progress towards that.
That's right. So one way you could think about this is to have whatever shoe you're wearing and think about what is one phase less supportive than what I currently have. So instead of saying I'm going, 10 steps forward towards the barefoot shoe, it's just like I'm going to do the next step. And then, I don't know, wear those for 6 months, right? Let your foot slowly adapt to a little bit less support, because when you keep giving it support, it has no reason to build the strength. When you take that support away, that's when your body will have to start, okay, now we need to start recruiting muscles because there's no, fake support here. We have to actually use our support. And think about graduating your shoe wear like that. So think about like one step at a time, a little bit less support, a little bit less support, a little bit less support. So you're thinking about a little bit less pitch. So your heel is getting closer to being flat to the ground versus pitched up, meaning like there's a little bit of a high heel in your shoe. A little bit less of the big arch support that we think of, like that medial arch. And then a lot of times if you put your hand on the bottom of a shoe, you'll feel other stuff. Like you might have some bumps underneath of the toe area that keeps your foot in place, things like that. So you're always thinking, oh, and then there's also like this part where if you're on YouTube, you'll see me, but it's almost like it angles your foot in or out, which is a little bit different than that arch support. So always feeling like, okay, I'm going closer to being flat, closer to being less input. So almost like when you pick up your shoe, in the end, it should be able to be flexible. It should be able to move in all different directions. You should be able to put your hand in there. There's no, I always call it like landscaping. There's no rolling hills in there, right? So, but we're thinking one step at a time. So the first thing you're thinking about when you're, the one thing you're thinking about when it comes to shoes is doing one step of less support at a time and allowing your body to adapt to that. And one of the best ways to let your body adapt to a new but lesser supportive shoe is to start getting MAT for your body and specifically your feet.
Absolutely. And I'm a testament to that 100%. It was like, I had extremely stiff feet from the number of times that I had rolled my ankles playing basketball all growing up. And I tell you, both of my feet were like bricks. And like I mentioned earlier, it got so bad that, within 5 minutes of going on a run, like my entire body would tighten up because it's just desperately trying to compensate around these feet that weren't moving. That's not the case at all for me today. And it is 100% because of getting muscle activation techniques done on my feet and then throughout the rest of my system. And what was really interesting to me is, all through high school and college basketball, I wore a shoe size that was 12 and a half. And now I can't fit my feet in a 12 and a half size shoe. I wear a 14. And the reason is because my feet, when they weren't functioning well, in order to compensate for that lack of function, got, like I said, so stiff and so like if you think about like kind of clenching your hand, like that's how my feet had become because of the massive dysfunction within them. So structurally, it was like my feet were smaller. And now, since having gotten my feet worked on a consistent basis, my toes can actually relax and my feet can relax and my toes can splay out and spread. And now I can't fit my foot in a 12 and a half shoe comfortably to save my life. But, a 14 is now what I wear. And that is the size that fits me most appropriately because my feet are now structurally like more splayed out. Because the function of my muscles is much better as well. So 100% without question, like getting your feet worked on with muscle activation techniques and then going up the chain from there, your knees, your hips, your core and back muscles, that's a tremendous help and step in the right direction as far as getting your feet stronger and functioning better.
So when you're thinking about the considerations of, getting your foot to this place where you can handle a barefoot shoe, we're first considering where are you at right now and accommodating so that you can be, comfortable. And then also knowing like, hey, the goal here is that we have to keep and improve and maintain function of the feet, not allow this supportive shoe or potentially supportive shoe, if that's where you are, to create more dysfunction and more lack of health in the feet. So we're thinking about, hey, exposing our foot to these new shoes that are a little bit less supportive, and also working on the strength of your feet with MAT and the strength of the rest of your body with MAT, because we also know that other areas of your body highly influence how your feet are feeling and moving. Just like your feet influence up the chain, the rest of your body influences down the chain. So thinking about little new stimuluses and then the right direction of lesser support in the shoes, and pairing that with making sure you're maintaining and improving the strength and function of your feet as you do this.
That's exactly right. So if you're listening to this and you want to start taking action on what we're talking about, that's exactly what we can help you with at our studio, Muscle Activation Schaumburg, where we specialize in muscle activation techniques, including making sure that all 50 muscles in each of your feet are strong and functioning well. So in order to get started with this, all you have to do is go to our website, www.matschaumburg.com, click the big green button that says Get Started. You can see our availability and you can schedule yourself for your initial MAT consultation and assessment. Well, thank you so much for joining us, everybody. We always appreciate your eyes on YouTube, your ears on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you consume our content. If you wouldn't mind leaving us a rating and review, it always means the world to us when you do. We are wishing you a fantastic week, and we'll talk with you all next week.
This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Julie and Charlie Gates, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical issue, consult a licensed physician.